Welcome back. In tonight's episode, we're gonna go into the heart of Osaka, Japan, where something strange and deeply unsettling happened just a few years ago. So this story takes place in a well-known hotel, one whose name starts with the letter T. Locals whisper about it. Travelers leave with uneasy memories. So what happened there? Well, let's just say it's the kind of experience that makes you never want to stay alone in a hotel room again. Let's dive in. Back in 2019, a Japanese musician, we'll call him Paul, was in Osaka for a short business trip. He wasn't exactly a celebrity, not a household name, more of a D-lister really, someone you might vaguely recognize on the street, maybe from a late-night music show or an opening act of a small concert. He was one of those artists grinding it out, still chasing that big break. Now, Paul was no stranger to this particular hotel. Every time he came to Osaka for work, he booked the same place, without fail. It wasn't fancy, but it was convenient. It was close to all of his favorite restaurants, and more importantly, just a short walk from the venue where he usually performed. On this particular trip, Paul didn't bother booking ahead of time. He figured he could just walk in and get a room, like he always did. But this time, things didn't go as planned. When he arrived, the front desk staff politely informed him that all of the rooms were fully booked. Paul didn't take it well. He was known to have a bit of a temper, and it showed. He raised his voice, demanded to know if they had any idea who he was. "I'm pretty famous, and I'm practically a VIP here," he snapped. "I stay at this hotel every time I'm in Osaka. You have to find me a room. Any room. I don't care what it is. Figure it out, and make it happen." Now, if you know anything about Japan, you know this. Customer service is everything. Even when faced with difficult guests, staff will go above and beyond to accommodate you, especially if you're a regular. And so, they did. The hotel staff kept glancing at the screen and then at each other. Paul stood there, arms crossed, tapping his feet impatiently. After a few minutes of quiet murmuring behind the counter, one of them finally looked up with a polite smile. "Sir, we were able to resolve the issue. We found you a room." Paul snatched the keycard, grumbled something under his breath, and made his way to the elevator. The room was small, smaller than what he was used to, but that didn't matter. He wasn't planning to spend much time there anyway, just a place to crash between rehearsals, meals, and the show. But the moment he stepped inside, he noticed it. A strong scent hanging in the air. Not perfume, not cleaning solution. It was incense. The kind people burn during prayers or memorials. It wasn't exactly overwhelming, but it clung to the walls. It lingered. Paul wrinkled his nose. Weird, he thought. But he did say any room will be fine, and to the staff's credit, they made it happen, so he let it slide. Paul didn't waste any time. He dropped off his luggage, freshened up quickly, and headed right back out. One of the reasons he always stayed at this hotel, aside from the venue, was the location. It was only a few minutes walk from one of the busiest streets in Osaka. Bars, restaurants, KTV lounges, pachinko parlors, you name it. Everything lit up in neon. The city buzzed with life even after midnight. He met up with a few of his buddies, grabbed a late-night dinner, and drank well into the night. By the time 2 a.m. rolled around, Paul was full, tipsy, and just ready to crash. He said his goodbyes, tossed his jacket over his shoulder, and made his way back to the hotel. Just a short walk, one of the perks of staying in his usual spot. But this night was going to be different. When Paul got back to his room, he didn't even bother washing up. He kicked off his shoes, tossed his jacket onto the chair, and collapsed onto the bed. His head was spinning slightly, still a little buzzed, but mostly just exhausted. And the moment his head hit the pillow, He groaned. Ah, seriously? He sat up, confused. Did one of my friends follow me back? He stumbled over to the door and looked through the peephole. Standing outside was a hotel employee, uniform pressed, hands clasped politely in front of him, just standing there. Paul blinked. What the hell? Why would the staff be looking for me at this hour? His mind raced. Did something go wrong with my credit card payment for the room? Did I maybe forget to sign something? Then another thought crept in. Maybe he's a fan. That happens sometimes. Wants an autograph maybe. Maybe even a photo, who knows? The man outside must have heard Paul lean against the door, because without knocking again, he suddenly spoke. Excuse me, sir. I apologize for the late night disturbance. The front desk sent me. If you don't mind, may I come into your room? Paul furrowed his brow. That's weird. So Paul unlocked the door and cracked it open. Standing right there was the neatly dressed hotel employee. Uniform was so clean, posture straight. He gave a small bow and continued, I'm very sorry again, sir, for the inconvenience, but the guest who stayed in this room before you apparently left something very important behind. Do you mind if I come in just for a moment just to take a quick look? Paul hesitated. The guy looked legit, but something about the whole situation didn't feel right. 2 a.m? No prior call from the front desk? Still, Paul had already opened the door, so he nodded and let him in, but asked him to make it quick because he wants to go to sleep. The staff member didn't waste time. He stepped into the room and began searching frantically, checking drawers, behind the curtains, even crawling halfway under the bed. Paul just stood there, confused and annoyed, watching this guy scour the small space like he'd lost something important. After a couple of minutes, the man stood up, gave a deep bow, and apologized again. Then he left. Paul was irate now. Okay, what the hell is going on? It was almost 3 a.m. now, and hotel staff were barging into his room, looking for mysterious items left by somebody else. He collapsed back on the bed, hoping to get some sleep now. Then, his eyes shot open. You've got to be kidding me. He stomped back to the door and looked through the peephole again. Same guy, same uniform, same stiff posture. Sir, I apologize. May I come in to look for something the last guest left behind? Paul opened the door again, but before he could say anything, the man rushed past him and began searching the room again, retracing every single step he did before. Under the bed, behind the curtains, every drawer, nothing. Another deep bow, another apology, and just like before, he left. Paul slammed the door shut and stood there, his hands clenched. Now he was pissed. They're messing with me. That was the only explanation. He picked up the room phone and dialed the front desk, barking into the receiver. Get someone up here now. I'm done playing games. 3 staff members arrived minutes later, all bowing deeply as Paul stepped out into the hall. We're very sorry for the inconvenience, sir. How can we help? Paul's voice cracked with anger. Help me? Are you serious? One of your coworkers has come into my room twice in the middle of the night, barging in to look for some forgotten item from a previous guest. He didn't even wait for me to say yes the second time, he just rushed right in. What kind of manners is that? There was a long pause. One of the staff, a younger man, looked up slowly and asked, Sir, if you don't mind me asking, do you remember the color of his uniform? What color was his collar? Paul blinked, caught off guard. His collar? Green. Yeah, green. The staff exchanged glances. Then the younger man pointed to his own collar. It was red. Sir, he said carefully, we haven't used the green uniform in over a year. Our uniform colors were updated last spring. No one here on our staff wears green anymore. Paul frowned. Okay, so what are you saying? That the guy who came in doesn't even work here? Silence. Are you telling me that someone off the street just walked into my room twice pretending to be a staff? Because if that's the case, your hotel has a serious security problem. None of the staff seemed willing to say anything. They just stood there, nervous, avoiding eye contact, as if speaking the truth would stir something up. But finally, the young man who asked about the caller spoke. His voice was low. "Sir, there was an incident in this room a few years ago." Paul narrowed his eyes. The staff continued. "A guest once claimed they lost something valuable here. It turned into a pretty big deal. Security was called, and the blame fell on the young staff member. It was his first job out of college. He was publicly scolded by the manager, humiliated in front of other staff and guests, and that night he came into this room and hanged himself." Paul froze. "Since then," the staff member said, "there's been reports. Guests saying they've seen the same thing you pretty much told us just now. The staff was always polite, always apologetic." The young man lowered his gaze. "That's why this room was closed off. We don't normally rent it out anymore. Today is actually the anniversary of the staff's death. This morning, monks came into this room and performed a cleansing ritual." Paul stood there, completely still. The scent of the incense. That's why it was there when he first walked in. It all made sense now. Without saying another word, he grabbed his luggage, slung his bag over his shoulder, and walked out of the room. He didn't even check out, he just left, because no amount of convincing, no proximity to bars or venues was worth spending another minute in that room. Sometimes, when a hotel tells you that they're fully booked, don't push it, because that last forgotten room they somehow found for you, it might have been left empty for a very good reason. Our second story also takes place in Osaka. Yujin, who wasn't originally from there, had just moved to the city for college. He grew up in a different prefecture, and while his family didn't have a lot, they always tried to support him as best as they could. Every so often, they'd send him a bit of money, just enough to cover rent, groceries, and maybe a few school supplies. But that was about it. He wasn't struggling, exactly, but there was never anything left over for fun. No nights out, no splurging on games or clothes, just enough to get by. One day his friend said something pretty obvious. "Why don't you get a part-time job if you need the extra cash?" At first, Yujin wasn't too keen on the idea. He had just started college and really wanted to just focus on his studies, but the thought lingered. Yujin had always been into fashion, like really into it, and as much as he tried to brush it off, the idea of being able to afford a few nice pieces of clothing now and then, it was really tempting. Eventually, he started thinking, maybe working a few nights a week wouldn't be so bad after all. So Yujin asked his friend, "Okay, but what kind of part-time job would even be worth it? I need something flexible, something that won't mess with my classes." That's when his friend leaned in a little and said, "Well, there's this app." Yujin raised an eyebrow. "It's kind of weird, but you can rent yourself out as a boyfriend just for the day." Apparently, it was mostly older women using it. They pretty much pay to have a younger guy keep them company. They would take you out to dinner, take you to go shopping, maybe just walk around town for a little bit. And the pay? It's not bad at all. Whatever happens after that, his friend added, it's totally up to you. But honestly, most of the time, it's just dinner and a few hours of chatting. That's it, nothing sexual. It sounded strange, but also kind of harmless. And for someone like Yujin, who was quiet, polite, and pretty well dressed, it didn't seem like the worst idea. Later that night, back at his dorm, Yujin couldn't stop thinking about this app. How much could you really make doing something like this? He started doing some digging, went down a bit of a rabbit hole, scrolling through forums and message boards where real users shared their experiences. And that's when things got really interesting. One guy wrote about giving a shoulder massage to a client, nothing more, and walking away with 40,000 yen. That's almost $400. Another said just going out to dinner earned him 17,000 yen, and the meal was completely free. But the one that really caught Eugen's eye was a post where a woman had offered a deal. If you spent 2 hours with her, just dinner and a chat, she would let you pick out anything you wanted to buy, up to 60,000 yen. That's nearly $600. No strings attached, supposedly. It all sounded almost too good to be true. There were a ton of posts like that. Some people made even more. Eugen kept scrolling, eyes wide. For a broke college student, this was kind of a goldmine. No hard labor, no weird contracts, just hang out with someone for a few hours. Be polite, listen, smile, maybe give a massage if they ask nicely. But even that wasn't expected most of the time. And best of all, no strings, no pressure, and definitely nothing sexual. Just time, conversation, and free food. Honestly, it seemed like the perfect side hustle. By the end of the night, Eugen was sold. He thought to himself, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Eugen had always been told he was a good-looking guy. Sharp features, clean style, and kind of a quiet confidence that people naturally gravitate towards. But he never actually imagined that this would become a side hustle for him. Within just a few weeks of signing up, he was already getting tons of bookings. 10,000 yen here, 15,000 there. It started adding up fast, and with each successful session, Eugen found himself getting more comfortable, even confident. He started carving out more time in his schedule, taking on extra clients whenever he could. The income was steady, the work was easy, and before long, he was hooked. For the first time since moving to Osaka, he felt like he was really living, eating well, dressing better, even saving a little on the side. As the weeks went by, Eugen started getting pickier with his bookings. He proved himself on the app and had good ratings, good manners, and now he only took the higher paying offers. And then, one evening, a new message came through. One that made his jaw drop. I'm a single woman, approaching 60 years old. I would love to book you for 3 hours. I want you to come to my house and cook for me. After we eat, I would like us to take a nap together. Don't worry, nothing sexual. I will pay you 300,000 yen if you accept. Eugen's eyes practically popped out of his head. 300,000 yen. That's almost 3,000 US dollars. For 3 hours, he replied instantly. There was no location listed on the client's profile, so he asked, "Are you located in Osaka?" The client responded, "Yes." But after chatting a little more, it turned out that wasn't exactly true. They were about 2 hours outside of the city. Pretty far, honestly. But for that kind of money, Eugen figured he could take the bullet train, maybe even stay somewhere overnight if he had to. It was a lot for one job. He agreed. That's when things started to feel a little off. Instead of sending him a location, or a pin, or some kind of address, the client replied with something unexpected. A photo. It was a hand-drawn map, step-by-step directions from the nearest train station from her house, sketched in pencil on lined paper. Who still hand-draws maps these days? There were little arrows, labels like turn left at the stone lantern or turn right at this location, and even a note that said, if you reach the rice field, you've gone too far. Eugen just stared at it for a while, confused. Why not just send a Google Maps link? He figured maybe it was because she was older. Maybe she didn't know how to use smartphones very well. It was odd, sure, but 300,000 yen was a powerful motivator. So he shrugged it off. Probably just a harmless old lady, he thought. What's the worst that could happen? The next day, Eugen packed a small bag and headed out. He took the train to the station that the client had mentioned, some rural stop way out in the countryside. Once he arrived, he pulled out the photo of the hand-drawn map on his phone and began to follow it. At first, it seemed kind of charming, but after a while, it just started to drag. The roads were so long and narrow and dead quiet. No shops, no people, just endless stretches of empty land and scattered trees. It felt like he had been walking for hours. At one point, he muttered under his breath, "Where even is this place?" Just as he was starting to wonder if maybe he took a wrong turn, the final landmark on the map came into view. A crooked wooden sign with faded writing, just like it was drawn. He looked up, and there it was. Behind tall stone walls covered in creeping ivy was a massive house. More than that, it was a mansion, hidden all the way out here in the middle of nowhere. Eugen blinked, stunned. He wasn't sure what he expected, but it definitely wasn't this. Eugen walked up to the front gate and pressed the doorbell. A few seconds later, the intercom crackled to life. A woman's voice answered, calm and gentle. "Hello?" "Hi, I'm Eugen," he said. There was a pause. Then she replied, "Oh, you're finally here. I've been waiting all day for you." Eugen hesitated for a second. The way she said it wasn't creepy exactly, but it felt strange. Before he could respond, she continued, "Please, come in. Just push the gate open, it's not locked." He reached out and gave the gate a gentle push. Sure enough, it creaked open without resistance. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. As Eugen approached the front door, it opened before he could even knock. Standing there was a woman. She had told him that she was approaching 60 and didn't give him her exact age, but looking at her now, Eugen was surprised. She didn't look a day over 45. She was elegant and well-dressed, and clearly someone who took care of herself. She smiled warmly and stepped aside. "Welcome, please come in." The inside of the house was incredible. It was spacious, pristine, and quiet. So quiet. To the left, Eugen noticed a guest room with a neatly made bed and sunlight pouring in through the wooden blinds. To the right, there was a massive tatami room, wide open and almost museum-like in how perfectly aligned everything was. It was the kind of home you only see in the movies. "Wow," Eugen said, glancing around as they walked deeper into the house. "Your home is beautiful. Do you live here alone?" The woman gave a soft nod. "I do," she said with a smile. As they walked toward the kitchen, they passed by another room on the left. Eugen slowed down a little bit. Curiosity got the better of him. How do rich people really live, he wondered. He peeked through the open hallway. It looked like a prayer room. The lights were dim, but inside was a stunning altar. Intricately carved, polished to a soft glow, with a large statue of the Buddha sitting at the center. Incense sticks sat in the holder, long burned out, and golden ornaments framed the shelves. It was beautiful. Wow, Eugen thought, this is next level. But then, something caught his eye. Right in the center of the altar, just beneath the Buddha statue, was a framed photo that caught his attention. But the longer he stared, the more his chest tightened. It looked like him. Same hair, same face, same facial structure. Eugen's heart skipped a beat. Is that me? He thought. No, it can't be. It just looks like me, right? The more Eugen thought about the photo, the more uneasy he felt. His mind raced. Was that really me? Am I overthinking this? But no matter how he tried to reason with himself, that sinking feeling wouldn't go away. Still, he couldn't show it. The woman was standing right there. He forced a smile as she looked at him and said cheerfully, "Take a seat. I'll grab the groceries." Eugen nodded and sat down on the couch, doing his best to act normal. He glanced around the living room. Everything perfectly arranged like a model home. But even in all that beauty, something about the place felt off. Too quiet, too still. A few minutes later, she returned with 2 large bags of groceries and laid everything out on the kitchen counter. Then she smiled and said, "All right, we can start now." That was part of the deal after all. So Eugen stood up, shook off that feeling in his gut, and made his way to the kitchen, trying to pretend nothing was wrong, even though every instinct in his body was screaming otherwise. At this point, Eugen had one thing on his mind: just cook the meal, eat it, receive his payment, and quickly get out of there. He moved quickly around the kitchen, trying to focus on chopping vegetables, boiling the water, and just anything to keep his thoughts busy. Behind him, he could feel her presence. She was sitting quietly on the couch in the living room, just a few meters away, watching him. Not talking, just watching. Eugen tried not to look back, but he could feel her eyes on him, the weight of her gaze following his every move. He forced a smile once or twice just to be polite, but she didn't say anything in return. She simply just sat there. She simply sat there, hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. The entire time Eugen was cooking, his thoughts kept drifting back to that photo. It looked so much like me. Too much. He kept replaying it in his head, the face, the angle, the way it sat on that altar. By the time he finished plating the food and brought it out to the dining table, he couldn't take it anymore. She was sitting quietly, still smiling, still so polite. And maybe that's what gave him courage to ask. He sat down, took a deep breath, and said, "Sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to peek earlier, but I noticed that on the altar in that room, there was a photo on it. It looked really similar to me. Is that me, or do you happen to know someone who looks a lot like me?" The woman paused, her smile softening into something distant. Then, in a calm tone, she replied, "That's my son." Eugen blinked. She went on, still composed, still gentle. "He was about your age when he passed away due to an illness. I really miss him terribly. Still do. But one day, I was scrolling through that app, and I saw your profile picture. And for a moment, it felt like I was looking at him again." She looked at Eugen with a kind and sad warmth. "That's why I asked you here. I wanted to share a meal, lie down for a while, and just feel like I had my son with me again. Just for a few hours." She bowed her head slightly. "I'm sorry if that's strange." At first, Eugen felt a wave of guilt. Maybe he had overthought everything. Maybe this was just a grieving mother trying to feel close to her son she lost. It was a tragic story, a little odd, but understandable. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, he thought. But even as he tried to convince himself, something didn't sit right. The way she talked about her son's death. So calm, so composed. And then, that smile. It wasn't warm. It was broken. It was just off. Subtle, but wrong. After dinner, the woman stood and smiled at him again. "I'll take care of the dishes," she said. "You can just relax a bit." Eugen nodded and stayed seated on the couch, still uneasy. As she moved to the kitchen and began rinsing the plates, Eugen quietly pulled out his phone. He went to a website he had heard about, one that lists homes in Japan where deaths have occurred. It's a public database, updated regularly. All you need is the address. He typed it in, and then, there it was. This house was listed. He tapped to expand the details. His eyes scanned the screen and froze. Cause of death: mother with psychological history murders son with kitchen knife. Deemed mentally unfit to stand trial. Not incarcerated, still residing at the property. Eugen's stomach dropped. It all made sense now. Why she didn't give him an address. Why she hand drew a map. She didn't want him looking up any information about the home beforehand. He stood up, heart pounding. Didn't say a word. He walked straight out of the house, through the quiet hallway past the heavy front gate and down the long empty road. He didn't care about the payment anymore. Eugen never went back on that app again. Not after that. And from that day forward, he never ignored that uneasy feeling in his gut.